in management of the Department of Defense. There's always room for improvement. I think what we need in that position is not just better, but the best in financial management, because those decisions are life and death decisions affecting the 3.4 million Americans who serve our national security and our national defense and put their lives on the line. I want to talk about financial mismanagement at the two organizations that you headed, which are the only test of your financial management that we have before this committee, the Veterans for Freedom and Concerned Veterans for America. You took over the Veterans for Freedom in 2007. In 2008, you raised $8.7 million, but spent more than $9 million, creating a deficit. By January 2009, you told donors that the organization had less than $1,000 in the bank and debts of $434,000. By 2010, revenue at the Veterans for Freedom had dropped to about $265,000. In the next year, it had dropped further to $22,000. You don't dispute these numbers, do you?
Senator, I'm extremely proud of the work me and my fellow vets did at Vets for Freedom. A bunch of young vets with no political experience, a small group working hard every single day. We raised donor funds. And we have letters submitted for the record from almost everyone that worked with me every single day, including our chief operating officer, who will attest that every dollar we raised was used intentionally toward the execution of our mission, which is supporting the warfighters, exactly why we're here today, the warfighters in the Iraq surge. There was a campaign in 2008, Senator. It was Barack Obama versus John McCain. We believe John McCain would be the right person to win, and so we spent more.
Tax returns from that organization.
I'm glad they're for the record.
I'm going to ask to be entered into the record, Mr. Chairman.
Without objection.
These tax returns are yours. They have your signature. And I'm going to ask that members of the committee review them because they're the only documents. I've asked for others. I've asked for the FBI report that would presumably document, it should have documented, this kind of financial mismanagement. And these are the 990s from that organization. By the year of 2011, donors had become so dissatisfied with that mismanagement, they in effect ousted you. They merged that organization with Military Families United, and thereafter you joined a second organization as executive director.
In between, Senator, I went to Harvard University for 2 years and Afghanistan.
I want to ask you questions about Concerned Veterans for America. Again, another set of tax returns, the 990s from that organization. I ask they be made part of the record, Mr. Chairman.
Without objection, both of those returns are now part of the record.
2011 to 2016. At the end of 2013, shortfall of $130,000. At the end of 2014, shortfall of $428,000. You had a surplus the following year, but then another deficit of $437,000. By the time you left, that organization had deep debts, including credit card transaction debts of about $75,000. That isn't the kind of fiscal management we want at the Department of Defense. We can't tolerate it at the Department of Defense. That's an organization with a budget of $850 billion, not 10 or 15 million, which was the case at those two organizations. And it has command responsibility for 3.4 million Americans. The highest number that you managed in those two organizations was maybe 50 people. Let me ask you, how many men and women now serve in the United States Army? What is Sen's strength?
Senator, I would like an opportunity to respond to
Well, I've asked you a
impugning
question.
of my
How many-
leadership of
how
a
many men
veterans
and women
organization. Concerned
currently
Veterans for
serve?
America, you're on the VA committee, sir, and I appreciate your service there. The VA Accountability Act and the Mission Act were all brainchilds of Concerned Veterans for America. We used our donor money very intentionally and focused to create policy that bettered the lives of veterans.
Mr. Hegseth, I'm asking you a very simple question. How many men and women currently serve in the United States Army?
Senator, the United States Army, 450,000 on active duty, sir.
And how many in the Navy?
And the Navy is 425, sir.
Well, it's 337 this year. How many in the Marine Corps?
175,000, sir.
172,300. Those numbers dwarf any experience you had by many multiples. I don't believe that you can tell this committee or the people of America that you are qualified to lead them. I would support you as the spokesperson for the Pentagon. I don't dispute your communication skills, but I believe that we are entitled to the facts here. I've asked for more documents. I assume you'd be willing to submit to an expanded FBI background check that interviews your colleagues, accountants, ex-wives, former spouses, sexual assault survivors, and others, and enable them to come forward.
Senator, I'm not in charge of FBI background checks.
But you would submit to it and support it.
I'm not in charge of FBI background checks.
Thank you, Senator Blumenthal.
This wasn't about political ideology. It was about basic competence. Pete Hegseth wants to manage the Department of Defense, the largest federal agency on Earth, the budget close to $850 billion and responsibility for 3.4 million service members. But Senator Blumenthal exposed that the only thing Hegseth managed before this was 2 nonprofits, both of which ended in debt, lost donor trust, and eventual collapse. Let's start with Veterans for Freedom. In 2008, the organization raised $8.70 million. But by January 29th, it was already running a deficit. With only a few $1,000s in the bank and $434,000 in debt, by 2010, revenue had dropped sharply. And by 2011, donors were fed up with the mismanagement. The group had to merge with another just to stay afloat. And Hegseth was ousted. Then came Concerned Veterans for America, where Hegseth served as executive director. Blumenthal entered the tax returns directly into the Senate record, revealing a similar story, a $130,000 deficit. In 2013, a $428,000 deficit in 2014, a brief surplus, followed by another $437,000 shortfall by the time Hegseth left, along with credit card debts, transaction fees, and chaos. And let's be clear, these weren't large organizations. At most, Hegseth was managing maybe 50 people. Compare that to leading the U.S. military, over 1.3 million active duty troops, more than 2 million reservists and civilian staff, and a global command structure that demands precision, integrity. Blumenthal didn't just question the numbers. He questioned the scale. How many serve in the Army, Navy, and Marines? Hegseth couldn't even get those numbers right. That's not just embarrassing, it's disqualifying. And here's the kicker. When asked if he would support an expanded FBI background check that included interviews with former spouses, sexual assault survivors, and colleagues, Hegseth deflected. Just like he deflected when asked about the missing money, and just like he deflected when confronted with his own track record. Blumenthal was crystal clear. You may have the communication skills to be a Pentagon spokesperson, but leadership, financial discipline, and accountability, you've shown us none. And when the Department of Defense controls nearly $1 trillion and oversees the lives of millions of Americans, none simply isn't good enough. If you're tired of unqualified Trump-aligned loyalists being handed power while our institutions burn, you're not alone. Subscribe to The Liberal Lens, where we break down every hearing, every lie, and every reckless nomination without pulling any punches. Smash that like button, hit subscribe, and turn on the bell so you Don't miss what's coming next, because these fights are far from over.